are now through 10 weeks of the NFL season, and if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that the NFC is surprisingly way better than the AFC. Just look at the playoff picture. It's nuts. And with that playoff picture in mind, we are back again for another week of our power rankings, this time for week 11. But before we get into the video, I want to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. Really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Thursday and Saturday all year long. Now, let's get back to the video. Starting out here, we have our bottom 12 teams. And yeah, you had a couple wins in this area. You had the Panthers beating the Giants over in Germany, the Patriots beating the Bears, and you had the Saints overcoming their arch rival Falcons to win that game. But at the end of the day, most of these teams are just bad. None of these teams are doing anything. The one addition to our bottom 12 teams this week is the Chicago Bears. They fired their offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. Caleb Williams had a few weeks where he looked very good, but in recent weeks he's looked terrible. The offense has looked terrible. The defense hasn't been able to make up for it, and they belong here in the bottom 12 teams. Additionally, the Cowboys continue to tumble down this list, seeing as they have now lost Dak Prescott officially for the rest of the season, and this team is going nowhere fast. Moving into our middle 10 teams, we have the Dolphins moving up a fair bit from 25th to 19th. Thanks to finally getting a win with Tua, they overcame the Rams. We were expecting them to move up in these rankings as they got Tua back, and they are moving up, but I still don't think this team is too competitive. They're still a fair bit off of the playoffs, though I acknowledge over in the AFC, they're only 2 games back of the playoffs. If they were in the NFC, they would literally be done. But in the AFC, they're only 2 games back and actually could go and win some games and put themselves in the conversation, which is crazy to say. So they move up here to 19. Outside of that, the Falcons drop a little bit thanks to their loss to the Saints. That was a rivalry game, but it's still a bad loss for a Falcons team that is supposed to be an elite team and should still be able to make the playoffs thanks to their weak division in the NFC South. And we had the Texans tumbling down outside of the top 10 thanks to their abysmal showing against the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. Yes, I understand they only lost on a last-minute 50-plus yard field goal, but come on. Did you watch that game? The Lions threw 5 interceptions. When you lose to a team that threw 5 interceptions, you did not play well. And the Texans cannot belong in the top 10 at 6-4 with how they've played lately. And then we got a team like the Bengals. Yeah, they lost on Thursday Night Football, but they're still moving up a spot because they barely lost to the Baltimore Ravens. And I mean, pending what could have happened on that 2-point conversion, a couple penalties could have been called against Baltimore. Who knows? Maybe the Bengals are 5-5 and literally tied for a wild card spot. Even now, they're only 1 game back of the Denver Broncos. And if you were to ask me, who do I think is going to make the playoffs? The Bengals 1 game back of the Broncos or the Broncos? I'm taking the Bengals, and that's no offense to the Denver Broncos. It's just that the Bengals are a really good football team, and it looks like they're figuring it out. And the AFC looks weak enough that 9-8, maybe even 8-9, might be enough to make the playoffs in the wild card in that conference, in which case the Bengals could absolutely make it and be very troublesome for whomever wins the division and has to go against them in the first round. Now moving into our top 10, we have a first-time appearance on our top 10, and that is the Arizona Cardinals, moving up 3 spots, 6-4 on the season. They are on a 4-game winning streak, and I talked about the Cardinals at the beginning of the season. This is a team that I thought would be significantly improved over their 2023 iteration. There was a brief period of time where I thought I might have been wrong on that prediction, but with what we've seen from the Cardinals lately, this prediction seems absolutely accurate. Yes, the Cardinals do have 4 losses, which is more than most teams on this list. But let's look at who those 4 losses are to. Those 4 losses are to the Lions, the Packers, the Bills, and the Commanders. Those are 4 teams that have yet to appear on our power rankings. The Cardinals have lost games, yes, but every game they've lost has been to good teams. And they are beating other good teams, and they're always winning against the bad teams. Again, some of those other wins that they've had on this schedule are against the 49ers, who have a winning record. The Chargers, who have a winning record. Like, the Cardinals have had one of the toughest schedules on the season to date, and they are still 6-4. This is a very good football team, and it's time we gave respect to them, and so they have made it into my top 10 at number 10 on this week's iteration of the Power Rankings. At number 9, coming off their bye week, we have the Green Bay Packers falling 1 spot in the Power Rankings. Usually I keep teams on the bye fairly similar to where they were the previous week, and the Packers moving down one spot doesn't really have anything to do with the Packers because, again, they were on bye. It's more to do with the fact that there's a team that's going to be coming up shortly who's just moving up in the power rankings, and so the Green Bay Packers had to move down because of how that team performed. The Packers are still a very good team. It's crazy that they only occupy the third wildcard spot as of right now, behind the Commanders and the Vikings, who are in the second and first wild card respectively. But the Packers are still a really, really good football team. They might have their work cut out for them because the San Francisco 49ers are only a game back of them for the wild card, and the Cardinals are leading the division in the NFC West, but they're only half a game back of the Packers if they were to need to go for the wild card. So the Packers will have to win games if they want to hold on to their wild card spot, which just shows you how good the NFC is right now. It is a very competent and capable conference, which I did not anticipate coming into the 2024 season at all. And moving on to number 8, falling one spot in our power rankings from last week, we have the 7-3 Washington Commanders. The Commanders lost at home to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a very close game where Mike Williams was able to catch a game-winning TD right towards the end. But don't be mistaken. The Commanders are still an extremely talented football organization. They should easily be able to make the playoffs. 7-3 is a very good record. They probably need 10 or 11 wins to make it, but that only means going 500 for the remainder of the season. I absolutely see the Commanders being able to do this. Yes, they do have some tough games still upcoming. They play on Thursday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles. That will be a very good contest, but I believe in the Commanders. Their defense has improved. Their offense looks great. This is a playoff squad, and they belong at number 8 in spite their loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers this past week. And at number 7, we have the Philadelphia Eagles leapfrogging both the Green Bay Packers and the Washington Commanders. They are now 7-2 as a team. They are legit. There has definitely been some games that have left a lot to be desired for the Eagles, especially earlier on in the season. They were getting wins that didn't seem that great, but now this team looks really, really good. Their recent weeks have been much more convincing victories. Yeah, they were only playing the Dak Prescott-less Cowboys this past week, but they still destroyed them. And I mean, it was not close. I don't think Dak Prescott would have made a difference in that game. The Eagles were winning it no matter what, given the fact that they won by, 28 points or something like that? Dak Prescott was not making up for 28 points. Let's be very clear on that. The Philadelphia Eagles are good. Their run game is one of, if not the best in the NFL, with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley running the football. Really only the Detroit Lions with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, as well as the Ravens with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, can compete with the Philadelphia Eagles run game. And so with that 7-2 record, I kind of have to put the Philadelphia Eagles moving up this power ranking, and they're all the way up to number 7. They're now leading the NFC East. They are second overall in the NFC, which is really good position to be in, but given how competent everyone is in the NFC, you really want that first round bye because there are no easy games in the NFC come playoff time. At number 6, falling one spot from last week, we have the 7-2 Minnesota Vikings. And the Minnesota Vikings did get a win this week, but it was not a very convincing win. They won 12-7 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, the Jaguars are one of the worst teams in the NFL this year, and the Vikings could barely beat them. And then the previous week, they had some trouble against the Indianapolis Colts, a team that also hasn't looked that good. The Minnesota Vikings defense is legit, but their offense has sputtered a bit in recent weeks. Yes, they still have Hawkinson, Addison, Jefferson, and I still think Sam Darnold is legit, which is why the Vikings are number 6 on this list. Trust me, if I didn't believe in their offense, they would not even be in the top 10, let alone number 6. But the Vikings are definitely a team that doesn't look as dominant as they did in their early season form, and so I'm knocking them down a little bit, but they're still 7-2. They still should be able to make the playoffs. They're still occupying that first wild card spot, which might be the best position to be in right now for the NFC, because you get to go up against the worst divisional leader, which is probably the Atlanta Falcons. And I'm not knocking the Atlanta Falcons. They're still a decent team. But there's a reason that I have everybody else fighting for the NFC playoff picture higher than the Falcons. And it's because I think the Falcons is just the weakest of those teams. That's just my opinion. And so, being the number 1 wildcard seed, the Vikings are in a really good position right now. and I think they'll easily cruise to the playoffs and belong here at number 6. At number 5, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers moving up one spot from last week's iteration of the power rankings with a 7-2 record. The Pittsburgh Steelers are good. Get it through your head. They are good at football. Their defense is dominant. They were able to shut down Jaden Daniels this past week. Their offense is very, very competent. They are not elite. Don't mistake what I'm saying, but they can move the ball. They can win games that their defense keeps them in. The Pittsburgh Steelers are one of the best teams in the NFL. Russell Wilson has changed this team from being good to great, and they are absolutely a Super Bowl contender. Doubt this team at your own peril. They are 7-2 for a reason. They are winning football games for a reason, and they belong here at number 5. I have been higher on this team than most people for weeks, and every week that passes, I feel I'm more proven right and more vindicated as this team just keeps winning. Moving on to number 4, we have the Baltimore Ravens sitting at 7-3, half a game back of the Pittsburgh Steelers for that divisional lead, and these two teams play each other this week. That's going to be an absolute barn burner, one of the best games we have in Week 11 of the NFL season, and oh boy, I can't wait. Yes, the Baltimore Ravens are behind the Pittsburgh Steelers in the standings, but the only reason they're behind is because of those 3 losses, and 2 of those losses were bad losses. Those losses were to teams like the Raiders and the Browns. Those are brutal losses for the Ravens, but this is still a really good football team. Every other week we see them play, they are dominant. They managed to beat the Cincinnati Bengals this past week in an absolute barn burner. The Bengals and Joe Burrow went off, but it did not matter because the Ravens had the answer at every turn. Lamar Jackson is great. Derrick Henry is great. The Ravens are great, and they belong here at number 4 ahead of their divisional opponent, even though they are not leading the division. And at number 3, with an 8-2 record, we have the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are just good every single year. This team's basically already locked up the division. They literally have a 5-game lead on the division. The next highest win total after them at 8 wins within the division is 3. 3 wins. That's it. That's insane. The Buffalo Bills should soon get Amari Cooper back and actually integrated into this offense, which should only make them better. Their running game's good. Their defense has been more than solid all year long. They have a couple of losses, but those losses were to the Houston Texans, which they barely lost, and to the Baltimore Ravens, who we just passed on this list. And let's be clear, both of those teams are almost definitely making the playoffs. So these aren't bad losses that the Bills are taking. And so them being at 3 here makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people would love to put the Ravens higher than them, and I understand that want and desire. But again, the Bills' losses are good losses. The Ravens have 2 bad losses. And it's tough to put the Ravens any higher than 4th when they have 2 bad losses. At number 2 on our power rankings, where they've been for, God knows how long, we have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are 8-1, and yeah, they definitely came back down to earth offensively this past week. Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions, which is absolutely putrid. We all remember the Nathan Peterman game, the very famous Nathan Peterman game. Guess how many interceptions he threw in that game? 5. Now, I acknowledge that was 5 in the first half, and I also acknowledge one of those 5 interceptions was basically an arm punt at the end of the second half that really doesn't count because it didn't matter or mean anything. They were just going for a Hail Mary. It was picked off, so what? But still, the Detroit Lions threw 5 picks and beat the Houston Texans, a team that is going to make the playoffs over in the AFC. This team just found a way to win. Was it pretty? No. And if you want to talk about a team that wins ugly, at number 1, we got the Kansas City Chiefs. This team has won ugly basically all season long. They won on a blocked kick this past week to maintain their undefeated season. I don't think this team is going to end the season undefeated. In fact, I think it's pretty darn likely they end their undefeated run this coming week when they play the Buffalo Bills. But they belong here at number 1. They're undefeated, 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. I don't know how many times I need to say this to people because, trust me, a lot of people have been putting the Chiefs lower on this list for quite a while. But not me, because you cannot knock Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They have won, I think, 17 straight games at this point, playoffs included. You can't knock that team. It might not be pretty, but good teams can win ugly, and that's what the Chiefs has done, which is why they're number one. And so that's it for our power rankings, but as always, that is not it for the video, as we always predict our Thursday night matchup at the end of our power ranking video. And this Thursday night game, we have the Washington Commanders visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. Ooh, this is going to be an exciting game. The winner of this game will be in the lead of the NFC East, which is massive. That is home field advantage for the first round of the playoffs. And you'll put yourself in the position to compete against the Detroit Lions for the number 1 seed and a first round bye in the playoffs. In recent years, the Washington Commanders, even when they were not very good, always gave the Philadelphia Eagles fits. This was always a closer game than it ever should have been. Last year, they went to overtime in one game where the Eagles won, and the other one was less than one possession game. And let's be clear, this was when the Eagles were en route to like 10-1, and the Commanders ended up getting the second overall pick. These teams were night and day, and yet the Commanders still gave the Eagles fits. And the year before, when the Eagles lost only 3 games, guess who handed them one of those losses? The Commanders. The Commanders have always played the Eagles well, but that was a different Commanders regime. That was a regime that just seemed to understand how to beat the Eagles, and in all those contests, they had pass rushers like Montez Sweat and Chase Young, who the Commanders just don't have anymore. But, I mean, can you imagine how good the Commanders would be if they still had those guys? Oh, this team would be exciting. This team would be competing with the elite of the elite if they still had those level of pass rushers, believe you me. And so while the Commanders are an extremely good football team, this game is in Philadelphia. We don't know how the current regime will be against the Philadelphia Eagles. And given the Eagles have the ability to just run the football really, really well, I have them winning this game. I think it's going to be a fantastic Thursday night football game. I'm very excited for it. It's one of the best we've had all season. And I mean, coming off the backs of what we had last week in Baltimore and Cincinnati, going into Washington and Philadelphia, like, when did Thursday night football kind of become good? I don't know, but I'm not mad about it. I hope it is as good as a game as I expect it to be, but I do think the Philadelphia Eagles walk with this one. And so that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, remember to leave a like and comment down below. Help us out, help us grow. We'll be back on Saturday with our Week 11 pick'ems. I will see you all then. Peace!